It's time to focus on seniors with Helping Seniors TV. The television show designed to make you aware of senior issues and needs, as well as to acquaint you with the resources available to help you age in place and with dignity. Now, here's your host, Joe Steckler.
I'm Kerry Fink, guest hosting for Joe Steckler, and welcome to Helping Seniors, the television arm of Helping Seniors of Brevard County. Our show is designed to provide you with the information on how to develop your own aging and care plans. And our topic today is stroke a year later. Joining me today as our guest is Joe Steckler himself, president of Helping Seniors of Brevard, and also Chris Marriott, who is physical therapy rehab director of Gentiva Home Health Care. Welcome, gentlemen. It's interesting to be in your seat and have you as the guest. But the topic today is Stroke Show a year after the stroke. And we were just going over the calendar. December 19th, year ago, December 19th, 2013, you had what the doctor said was a very, very serious stroke.
Yes.
And I remember talking to you at the hospital literally probably 2 weeks after that, and you said, I want to record my recovery and hope that becomes a point of inspiration for people on how you can recover and work through a stroke. And on January 21st, so basically 2 months after that, we were filming together at Health South Sea Pines Hospital, and we were literally taping you as you were doing physical therapy, as you were doing occupational therapy, and as you were also doing speech therapy. And then 1 month after that, February 20th, we were actually recording Helping Seniors television programs there at Health South Sea Pines. And what an amazing recovery it's been. How do you feel a year after the stroke?
Actually, I feel pretty good, Kerry. I've noticed that on my left side, I had the stroke on the right side, so it affected my left side. And the only effect I think I really can account to the stroke is I have a little numbness on the left side of my tongue, and if I'm not careful, I will slur some words. So I have to be careful about that. But I've noticed recently, and going up and down steps, that I favor my left side a little bit. I have no problems with arms. I have been in the gym working out, but I had a condition called fibromyalgia along with all this other stuff, and it just really knocked me for a loop for a while. So I'm back now on doing the physical therapy that the Gentiva people put me on, and I'm trying to get my strength and my breathing under better control so I can go back to the gym to work out. But as far as the stroke, I feel that it's extremely important for the patient to be motivated. I was lucky. I think there were a lot of people praying for me, and I think that a combination of prayer, the physical condition that I was in at the time, and for some reason, unexplainable, a major stroke didn't affect me the way it did a lot of other people. And Chris, you and I have talked about this, and you know from your work as a therapist that strokes can go anyway.
A huge spectrum of a mini stroke or TIA, which literally comes and goes and really doesn't need any therapy at all, to quite devastating hemiplegic dense stroke, which people can suffer.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one of the things you you said you really had a passion so we could document the recovery process and help people understand, since it's such a prevalent type of situation that can come up suddenly. What remembrances do you have actually of the actual stroke itself, when it was happening?
What I remember, that was December 19th, 2013, was my last day of physical therapy by the Gentiva home health therapist. I finished my exercises, I walked her to the door, and I don't remember anything after that until several days later in the hospital. What, in retrospect, my wife came home with 3 of her grandchildren from Virginia. They came in for my 80th birthday. And Kerry saw me laying on the bed, and she thought I was saying my prayers. And when they went out and they made a lot of noise, and when I didn't come out, she figured something else was wrong. Came back in, and she heard me making a strange sound through my airway. And she immediately called 911. One of my granddaughters is in training to be a nurse, another's a hospital administrator, and the young boy, he went out looking for the ambulance because Terry had called 911. Turned out that number 1 was gone from our
mailbox.
Street address, from the mailbox. So he found the ambulance at the wrong house, got him back there, and the rest is history. They put me in that ambulance, and Terry rode the front seat, and it was amazing to her the amount of cars that just when the ambulance has the siren going, people just sort of stop, and they don't move to the side so an ambulance can get there and get the people to the hospital. But I didn't honestly remember. I have no remembrance of the stroke at all. I will say that physically, it affected me a little bit, not much. Mentally, memory-wise, I have had no problems. I've been able to do everything I could do before. I remember phone numbers. The good Lord is kind to me.
Yeah. No doubt. And for those of you who are watching, you may be interested to know that if you look at the Helping Seniors of Brevard.org website, helpingseniorsofbrevard.org website, you'll see that there are a number of television programs that are actually, you talk about the different things. You met, for example, with the first responders who actually came out and took you to the hospital. Yes. There's interviews with them. There's an interview with both the doctor, your emergency room doctor, who treated you at that time, and the registered nurse who was there. There are they talk about what happened there. Then we also have episodes where you were had the opportunity. It was amazing. 2 months after the stroke,
actually, it was only a month.
Yeah, to be interviewing the doctors who were in charge of your care there at the Health South Sea Pines and your rehabilitation. So if you want to take a look at those, there's all available on-demand video, and you can find those on the website. But a question I wanted to ask you was, what was it like, what did you feel it was like going through the recovery process? Just
hard.
Yeah.
Hard, wasn't easy. I can very definitely remember when that physical therapist had me on those parallel bars, walking and throwing a ball to me and getting me to catch the ball, and then I accused her of throwing the ball further to the right or farther to the left, so she made me stretch
Sounds
and move.
like a therapist, yeah.
It's not easy. It really isn't easy. And then you're on a table where they got your leg, and they want you just to slide your leg back and forth like this. Generally speaking, that's easy. But after you've had a stroke, it's not so easy. Mm-hmm. But I think the greatest asset I had working for me was there were a bunch of people praying. Mm-hmm. I very definitely believe in the power of prayer. I had a strong will to try to come back from this, but I also happen to be a believer in the fact that we will stay on this earth as long as the man above wants us to stay here, unless we hasten it unnecessarily ourselves. Not only have I had a stroke, but I had a complete dissection of my ascending and descending aorta all the way down into my stomach, and I lived through that. Mm-hmm. Why? Why did I live through that? I don't know.
I think you answered it just before you stated that.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a huge purpose on this planet,
yes.
and you're going to be 110 before we all know it, Joe.
That's right. That's
yeah.
right.
But Chris, you as I'll go back into my host role here. I'll ask a question right now. As long as you've known me for the last year, you've seen me do different things. You've been on different radio and TV shows with me. But have you been able to ascertain as a therapist any changes in where I was a year ago to where I am now?
I am amazed at how fast and how fully you've recovered, really. And it's a power, and you think you hit a nail on the head when you said that your level of health and conditioning and work ethic prior to that and during your recovery is what we see is key to success as therapists. Someone who's motivated in their return, but also their body knows and their body has done exercise and work in the past, and that probably really sped up your recovery for sure.
You know what one of my greatest fears was? When I was down the Sea Pines, Health South Sea Pines, was my first shower. I just couldn't imagine sitting in that chair and with that cold water hitting me, and I made sure that CNA had the water good and warm. And the other thing is, we all have a sense of modesty about how we appear in the state of undressing for members of the opposite sex. But there was the attendant was going to give me a shower. I said something. I said, this is not the same. She said, I'm married. My husband. She said something. I said, yeah, but you're not married to me. There's a difference. And but we can impose obstacles, and some of the obstacles I had to learn to get over were some of the very simple things. Some of them was that I did get tired when I did my exercises, and there's a point, and you as a therapist know this, there's a point at which you don't want to try to push it too far.
Right, absolutely, because then you're doing detriment to your recovery. So there's a gradual increase in how much the therapist should be pushing you from your first week of recovery to weeks or months later, for sure.
But a lot is dependent, Chris, upon that patient-therapist relationship.
Yes.
And the people I had from Gentiva were very, very good. I would stack Beth up with almost any therapist I've worked
Absolutely.
with.
She's been with Gentiva probably as long as I have, a little bit less, and she's one of our clinical ladder recipients, which is an exceptional higher level that we recognize in therapy treatment abilities. So you have a great one for
and
sure.
She's
Beth.
one strong lady, too.
She is.
Yes, she is.
Yeah. No, I think so. I was going to ask the question, what do you think the importance of having good therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, how does that impact, in your mind, your recovery versus just what naturally might have happened?
Well, I'll speak from a patient standpoint and let Chris address the therapist side of it. When I was in Health South Sea Pines, the speech therapist determined, it's not just the ability to speak clearly. It also affects your ability to swallow, eat food. That therapist is looking at a lot of things. And as long as they didn't try to feed me those eggs they had at Health South Sea Pines, I could eat anything. But the eggs were not good, not the way they fixed them. And but they quickly determined that I really didn't need speech therapy, but what they did was they doubled up my physical therapy when I said I didn't need the speech therapy. And I know that was a good thing, but at the time when I kept going back in the wheelchair and having them start putting me through these exercises, I wasn't sure that I shouldn't have stuck with speech therapy a little bit longer.
Could have faked a bit of slurring, Joe. You would have got away from the physical therapy.
Yeah.
And Joe's very right. I mean, we are a big coach to you, and I think that's why it probably worked out so well with your therapist and yourself, because you're a learner, you're a doer, and the more that we can teach you why you're doing things, and it's doing it yourself, but it's also repetitions. When you're doing a stroke recovery, it's reprogramming the brain. And it's just like when you taught your kids to walk or to sit up for the first time. You got to do things over and over and over again to retrain that, we call a plastic brain. It has to be retaught how to do things. So the more we can do it, the more repetitions, and again, doing it yourself is a huge...
I think if there's one area that I could have devoted more time to, and I need to do it now, because I think you said it, you got roughly a 2-year window to make changes happen positively. I need to address my balance issues a little bit harder than I have. And it's easier said than done, quite frankly. The older you get, when you have a stroke, you also forget that the body hurts. And pain is a very real thing. And sometimes I just don't want to move, but I know that I have to do that.
And for you, Joe, I mean, many people know that you've got many other medical issues apart from your stroke that were compounding your difficulty with your back and with your hip. So you had to deal with that on top of recovering from a stroke.
You know, I didn't think about the back anymore. I kind of forgot about that. So many other things.
We won't talk about it then.
Yeah. Well, here's an odd question. Therapy and treatment is kind of like a chicken and egg. And that's a question for you, Chris, although I'm not sure totally how we interpret that.
Well, I mean, a lot of the therapy we do with stroke is activities. We used to always laugh as therapists, and then the main way to recover a limb which has suffered a stroke is to tie the good one behind their back. So we purposely try to use it, and we don't want you stabbing your head with a fork or anything like that, but to try to use that injured limb as much as you can. So actual function is actual therapy. So which is, you know, the chicken or the egg, or are you actually trying to use something, or is that part of therapy? And a lot of what we do is getting the body, again, used to doing repetitive motions and actions and reteaching it. So
yeah. My stroke didn't seem to affect my ability to use either my left or right arm. Mine, as I came out of the initial effects of the stroke, mine was sort of an overall thing. My whole body is. How do you account for that, Chris?
Some of it can be like a coordination versus a weakness. So you may not have noticed any muscle deficits, but just the whole thought process of how to use those muscles has to be retrained as well. So it's a series of conscious actions that in the past you might have subconsciously not even thought about how to use your arms or put things together or put words one after the other. A lot of recovery from stroke is consciously thinking and doing things until they become second nature.
I found that getting myself in a right frame of mind mentally was something that helped me do the physical part more easily. And I don't know how to explain that.
A lot of it is motivation. A lot of it is knowing that there's still work to be done, and because you can motivate yourself right out of recovery. You can get down on yourself, and a lot of it is that positive thinking that you're putting yourself through this because there's an end goal to be met. So we play coach and cheerleader as a big part of our therapy, and then we give people hope and knowing that this hard work will pay off. You know, The Biggest Loser, that show on the TV, and one of the biggest roles is a motivator, and to give them that extra reason why they need to work through all these difficult times.
Yeah, I felt, you know, when you asked me a question about how much did I remember that when I first was told and realized that I'd had a stroke, in thinking about all my previous medical problems, and at the time I was 80 years old, why me? What am I supposed to do with all this mess? And that's when I got the idea that if I could convince the doctors to let me bring that film crew, have you come in, film this stuff, and people could see. And I remember very clearly, they had me on doing one exercise, and I looked right at the camera, and I said, folks, this is me. I did have a stroke, and these are exercises I'm doing, and believe me, they may not look easy to you, but they're not easy to me.
Right.
I think sometimes we have a hard time putting ourselves in somebody else's position and saying, oh, come on, you can do it. Sometimes it's easy to say you can do something, but it's not so doggone easy to do it.
Right.
And I think that's where the motivation and having some people in your corner that know what they're doing. I've been with Gentiva for a hip replacement, for recovery from a dissecting or aorta and from stroke. So three major things. Speech, occupational, and physical therapists knew what they were doing. And they were able to encourage me to not only do these exercises when they were at the house, but to do the exercises when they weren't there, which is an extremely important thing to do for anybody that's in kind of a major problem where rehab is ordered. It's not just that you do what they tell you to do, it's you got to do what you know you're supposed to. You can't overdo it, but certainly underdoing it is probably the greatest self-detriment that you can cause yourself.
The biggest thing we talk about is compliance with our patients, and how are they following through with what we're teaching them, or do they have a good caregiver or someone that we can teach? All those things are a huge factor in the recovery of any illness.
You hit it. The therapist organization is a teaching organization. The patient is the learner, and the faster and the better the patient learns what the teacher is trying to impart to them and does that, the better chances you have are going to recover even more than you would have thought possible, especially from a stroke.
And that's probably one of your biggest things is, Joe, is you're a sponge of knowledge. You want to learn about whatever you're doing or going through and then disseminating that information out. So you're learning and really want to know it for your own benefit, but then you're turning it around and helping hundreds and not thousands of other people with what your knowledge is.
Well, I watched my mother go through a stroke, and I watched her give up. And I don't think people should give up. When you say give up, it's a strong word. You don't always know what's going through somebody else's mind. So I'll be kind and think about, maybe Mom will tell me someday why she did what she did.
Right.
She didn't want to go through therapy, and I didn't understand, because she was always a fighter. But she was disfigured, and she was paralyzed. So I didn't have that.
Right.
I was fortunate.
Well, that's a question I did want to ask is, the topic of probably the word fear is probably the right word when you sort of grasp the reality of the fight that you're going to have to walk through to bring yourself back. How did that impact you? I mean, you there's no doubt that over and over the message of never giving up and really being compliant with the things that might help you, but how much to get that motivation? I'm sure after you've gone through something like that, it's like an oh wow, oh no kind of moment. How do you work yourself through that?
That's probably one of the easiest questions for me to answer. And I didn't have any fear. I don't think I did. My only fear was that a power greater than me decided I was supposed to be here. So my fear was that I wasn't going to do what I was supposed to do to get to where that other power wanted me to be. That was motivation. I am a religious person. I believe in God, and I believe in prayer, but I also believe in a person doing the very best they can to overcome a situation, whether it be a physical situation or a financial situation or just living a life. You have to be willing to meet the challenge. I had the tools to accept the challenge, and it just went from there.
I've always thought that God gives you these situations because He knows you can handle it. And people say, "Why me? Why me?" And and because probably you're probably better apt at working through it than maybe some people who couldn't. And I think you're living proof of that from what you've gone through for many medical issues, that you can handle it. And not only that, but make some lemonade out of those lemons that you keep.
But
Absolutely.
Chris and Kerry, other people's presence and other people advocating for you and encouraging you, they play a tremendous part in a person's recovery from any kind of adversity. If people shut you off or turn you off, you've lost an extremely important asset in your own recovery. But the interest of other people, a smile from somebody. I remember that I had been at Sea Pines a week, and this little girl, she was 5 years old at the time, Bailey. Her mother and dad brought her down to see me. Bailey stood at the door of the room, walked over there, and came up next to my bed and put her arms down there for me to pick her up. I picked her up. She lay down in the bed. I put her head on a pillow right next to me. Tremendous incentive. You know, when you have people like that, it makes a lot of difference in how you approach any situation.
Yeah, that's so true. We have about a minute left, and maybe as kind of a closing question, Joe, as a person who's not only been blessed to be a survivor, but you've actually thrived on it. You've actually made it your work to be sure that you've lit a pathway for other people who may find themselves in a similar situation, that they don't have to necessarily just go it alone. There's resources that Helping Seniors is putting together that will help people understand, you know, here's the process, here's what you do, here's what can happen, here's how it can turn out. What would you look at the camera and tell somebody, this is my advice for you?
I think you have to believe in yourself. I have to think that you have to believe that there is help out there, and you take a combination of the help available and your own determination and the love of your family and friends. Makes all the difference in the world. Those are prime ingredients for anybody recovering from anything, and I bet you say the same thing, Chris.
Absolutely, nothing more to be said.
Yeah, that's a great way to close it out. Thank you for joining us today for this episode of Helping Seniors.